Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us today. Well, today we're going to be taking a quick look at the Mete by Canik. Now, we've had the opportunity to review some other Canik pistols on the channel so far, and up to this point, they have been pretty good shooting pistols, good triggers. They've had some good features, and so far they've done pretty well. Canik supposedly has been taking a lot of input from consumers, shooters, to make improvements to their pistols, and the Mete supposedly is the manifestation of many of those consumer demands. So today we're going to be having a look at it, see what has changed, and see how this makes this a better carry gun. And we're going to get into all that in just a minute. All right, once again, welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us. If this is your first time coming to the channel, welcome aboard. Thanks for being with us. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your loyalty. If you like our content, please consider subscribing. It'd be real easy to do. You can just hit that little button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen, or you can scroll down below the video, and you can hit the subscribe button that way. It helps us out a lot, and we really, really appreciate it. So, Canik Mete. If you don't know anything about Canik firearms, these are actually imported by Century Arms. They're made in Turkey. Now, I had not had any experience with Canik firearms until about a year or so. And I'd had the opportunity. I just hadn't messed with it. There's a lot of other good options, and I just hadn't looked at them. And so now that we have, it seems like every one of these Canik pistols that I pick up ends up being a really good shooting firearm. So we're going to explore this one today and kind of see how it stacks up and look at all the changes that were supposedly made to make it better. Well, the first thing, of course, we always like to do is give you a little comparison, because ultimately this is going to be evaluated as a carry gun. Now, this is no small pistol. I'm using a Glock 17 here for a basic size comparison. And as you can see, it's no small gun. If you look it over, you can see that the Mete is actually a little bit longer than the Glock 17. They've got a very similar trigger guard profile. The Mete is a little bit bigger, but that actually doesn't bother me one bit, because I'm rather a fan of a larger trigger guard, just from a operational standpoint, getting my finger in there quickly. The grip, I rather like the grip on the Mete. It doesn't seem like it's quite as blocky and quite as thick, but they are similar in overall length. Now, the Canik here, I'll get to the capacities in a second, but this has got the extended magazine in it, and without it, it's a little bit closer to the profile of the Glock 17. If you look at it from the top, you can see that little bit of extra length in the Mete. You can see the optics cut out on top, which we'll get to a little bit later. And then looking down the sight pictures, you can see that looking at the length, that they are very, very similar. You can see if that extended mag wasn't in there, these would be very, very close. So I always like to do that, just to give you an idea of what it's like, because ultimately at the end of the day, I know a lot of people who carry pistols, you know, this size. I typically don't, because I like to have a smaller pistol, even a revolver a lot of times, just so I can easily grab something and make sure I've got it. But there are a lot of people who can very easily carry larger pistols like this, and especially with all the advances in holster technology, you know, you can get a lot more firearm in a holster and be able to carry it. So if you're used to carrying something like a Glock 17 or maybe a larger firearm, then this probably wouldn't be an issue either. All right, we're going to jump into the features here, but before we do, we want to take a second to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of this Canik Mete for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, taking a look at this thing, first thing we'll do, of course, is make sure that we are clear. So we drop our magazine there, and then, of course, you can look and see that the chamber is empty. You can see all the way through, so we are nice and safe. So let's get to the very basics here. So this is a Striker fired 9mm semi-automatic pistol. They give you 18 round magazine, and in addition they give you another magazine that has a little extender on it here. It holds 2 more rounds, so you have a 20. So both an 18 and a 20 come with the firearm, which is pretty nice. And kind of looking at the firearm in no particular order, you can see that across the top here you've got your optics plate, and this comes ready to accept Trijicon RMRCC or Shield RMS, which is nice. You've got your sights. These are 3-dot white sights, and like I said, I normally will change my sights out to either night or a combination of fiber optic and Trijicon, but these are pretty nice. They show up really well, and they worked really well for our testing purposes. In addition, you'll see that the rear sight is angled slightly forward, and that is to make this easier to rack the slide against a surface for one-handed operation if you have an emergency. Now, you've got your front and rear serrations here that are pretty aggressive. You can feel these through gloves as easy as you can with your bare hands. You got your accessory rail, 1913 Picatinny rail, so if you want to put light or laser system on here, you can certainly do that. Here's your slide release. This is ambidextrous, and it's been slimmed down quite a bit if you want to compare it to some of the other Canik pistols, and you really notice it when you are handling the pistol because you just don't feel as much sticking up on the side as you used to. The ergonomics are pretty good right through here. I like the way the hand feels on the firearm. The trigger guard, they have worked this little cutout here to where you can get your finger a lot higher inside the grip than you used to. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference on how it feels in your hand. It just feels really good. I like the texturing. They've gone with the little, bumps on the back here, but they've got this fine texturing all the way around, which is also different. They had the rougher texturing on the front. So I really like what they did there. Your magazine release, very easy to get to, very easy to operate, very solid. They have also made a change ergonomically right here. This used to come out a little further before it turned upward, so it was more flat in here. And by them taking that material and rounding that off a little bit, it's a much better fit for your hand. And I can, as a guy with big hands, I can appreciate what they've done there because it's a lot more comfortable. You can see your loaded striker indicator. This is not a loaded chamber indicator. This just means that your striker is ready to fire. When you pull the trigger, you can see it disappears. I cocked the weapon, you can see its back, and then that little red dot goes away. You have an actual loaded chamber indicator right there, right behind the barrel, which will pop up whenever you do have a round in there. You do have the magwell here, this flared piece, and this can be removed. Like I say, if you're wanting to use this bigger magazine and you like being able to get your magazines quickly, this little magwell, of course, is a nice thing to have. But you can take a screw there and you can remove that, and then you can easily use that with the other magazine. And like I showed you in the beginning, with the regular magazine, this is very close to the Glock 17. It's almost identical as far as this length. So if you had this removed, it would feel a lot more like the 17 if you were carrying it on you. So the trigger is really nice. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the trigger yet because we're going to talk about that in the range section. But it has a really nice trigger, really smooth. And of course, you've got your, I was talking about the texturing, you've got these little pads up here on either side. Now, I've seen these used in a couple different ways. I've seen some demonstrations where people have got their thumbs extremely far forward and using those for stabilization. There's a couple of firearms I've seen where you can do that and it works. My grip on something like this, I wouldn't be quite that far forward, but it is an option for you there. So not too bad. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about something else that's pretty important on a gun like this. And that is, hey, there's your disassembly tab right there. Now what you do is you make sure the weapon is clear, of course, and then you pull back slightly right here and you pull down on these, and then you can see that it just comes forward. And you just come forward just a hair right here because there's a little notch that holds it. Then you just lift it straight up. And then once you do that, of course, it's going to disassemble just like you're used to with your your rod and your spring, and everything's captured the same way it normally is. So it's a very simple thing, but just keep in mind that you won't go all the way forward. You'll come forward just slightly and then lift up because you've got a little spot right here that cutout has to align with. So it's very simple. But, you can see just from this overview that Canik has gone through a bit of trouble with a lot of little things to make the ergonomics of the gun really nice. They're mild little changes, but they're things that hopefully for people will add up a lot when they carry the weapon. All right, we're going to talk about the range performance now. Like I said, we have had the opportunity on this channel to shoot some other Canik pistols, and up to this point, they've been pretty good. So the question, of course, going into this test was if we were going to experience the same thing. And I expected that we would, but let's kind of talk about what happened there. And once again, we'll verify that we're clear before we start manipulating things. You can see that we are empty, and we are empty. So I want to talk about the trigger first, because this is one of the most important things, obviously, that we can discuss on the firearm. And it's really, really nice. I want you to kind of pay attention here. As the trigger is being engaged, you have just a little bit of take up here, and then it breaks really cleanly. And then I want you to watch the reset here. Okay, now I know that was fast, so I'm going to come back. Look at that. Just look how short that is. There are people that many times, of course, if they're new to shooting, they haven't had their hands on a lot of firearms, this may seem like unimportant stuff to talk about, but that reset is so short. It's amazing how smooth your follow-up shots are when you have a reset like this, because you can just really keep the firearm on target. And I was really impressed with not just how good this trigger is, but how consistent this trigger is. Now, using my scale, I was getting somewhere between 3.2 and 3.3 pounds on the trigger. So yes, it's pretty light. I think it was great. It was a really great shooting experience. And of course, we did the usual test as far as what this thing will tolerate. Had several types of ammo. I like to really mix it up, but S&B, I had some of the PMC as far as your regular range ammo. Had your SIG, your V-Crown as far as your hollow points, and I also had some of the Hornady critical duty. So far, everything that I've run through this firearm has been great. I haven't had any problems whatsoever. And I didn't expect any, because the Caniks that we've tested up to this point have all done very well. So I kind of expected the same thing out of this. Now, accuracy, I had a lot of fun with this firearm. I got to be honest with you. On these larger firearms, well, you already know that you're going to get, better groups, better overall shooting with a larger pistol, a full-size pistol like this, and if you're carrying like a compact or a micro compact. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this model that we're looking at, there are two versions of this pistol. The one that you see here, this is the SFT, okay, and that is the standard size slide and barrel. They also make what's called the SFX, and the only difference between this and the SFX is it has a slightly longer slide and barrel, and that slide has lightning cutouts on the top, and it has a couple on the bottom. Basically, that's the only real difference between the two pistols. There may be some minor technical differences, but that's really the sum of it. But, a larger pistol like this is always going to shoot better than a smaller one. And this was no exception. Right out of the box, We're getting really, really good groups with the firearm. It's very easy to shoot. Like I said, the trigger is fantastic, and the comfort, the ergonomics on the Canik is just really, really nice. And even people who have never shot these firearms before, we always like to mix it up and get people involved in the range and let them have some time shooting the firearm. And people who've never had their hand on the firearm before, they actually were shooting this firearm better than the Glock. I actually had the Glock 17, and I actually had the HK VP9, and people who had never shot were actually doing a better job shooting the Canik than they were the other two pistols. And I guess a lot of that just has to do with the trigger. But really good performance, really good reliability. Once again, impressed with what Canik has brought us. So what's it like to carry this pistol on a regular basis? What's it like to conceal this thing? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. Well, two things. First of all, I did not have a specific holster other than my other Canik holsters available for this thing. But that's one thing about Canik, is that they like to give you stuff. So here we are, just as usual. Canik gives you a pretty nice little holster to go with the firearm. And, there are all kinds of accessories that come with the firearm besides this. You do have your different size back strap if you need it. They do give you your little punch for when you do full disassembly. They do give you a magazine loading tool, and of course they give you, your cleaning rod and your cleaning brush, which is nice. I mean, and these are little things, but it's just nice to get. They even give you, and this could be the most important thing. Check that out. So you've got your little baby version here of the pistol that you can take the bottom off, and then you've got your smaller tools inside there. And yeah, I know, I looked at this and I thought, well, that's interesting, but they give you this little thing to go along with it. It's like the baby version. Pew pew pew. So Canik likes to give you stuff. This is one of those things. Now, this is not the greatest holster in the world, okay? It is, it's free. It does a good job of holding the weapon. This is not my preferred holster type, for the simple fact that usually if I'm carrying a larger gun like this, I absolutely have to have leather between me and the firearm. And that's why I'm a big fan of either like an alien gear, a cloak tuck, or a crossbreed super tuck that'll have, once the weapon is against the body, I'll have that leather bit that comes up and around. And I just like that because I think it's a lot more comfortable. But as far as having something to carry the weapon with that actually fits the weapon perfectly, and this actually was not uncomfortable, it's just not as good as what I normally use. Hey, I always say that anytime you can get something for free, you're doing okay. And they give you these things. You can adjust the retention on this if you want to. So it does give you some flexibility. Now, as far as comfort in carrying the weapon, I'll be completely forthcoming here. I am not the kind of person who typically carries a firearm this large on me as a carry gun. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's a lot of people that can do it and do it comfortably. But I'm not really one of those people. This is what I would call a winter gun for me. If I'm on my property, where I can carry outside the waistband, if I'm open carrying, that's one thing. Excellent nightstand gun, something to have in the safe, that you can get to quickly if you need to. And of course, it's great for many, many things. But for me, I'm going to tend to carry something a little bit smaller. This thing is very heavy to me, especially with the 20-round magazine. People tend to underestimate, how much ammunition weighs. But by the time you put 20 rounds, think about that. By the time you put an entire box plus one into this firearm, well, it's already heavy. So it's going to get a lot more heavy when you add the ammo to it. So for me, it's a bit much, but I know people that can do this on a regular basis and be perfectly fine. To me, as far as the weapon being sleek enough and the ergonomics being good enough, it fit pretty well inside their holster, and I carried it on the body no problem. But it's a little bit heavier than what I would carry on a regular basis, so that's just me. But if you like a larger firearm and you're used to that, this is a great option to consider because it's got a lot of great features. So overall impressions of the Mete by Canik. Well, you know, Canik has been making surprisingly good firearms at a lower price point than a lot of its competitors. Now, I don't shop 100% by price whenever I'm looking for firearms. I think shopping anything 100% by price is a remarkably bad idea. But you do get some offerings that are really good and they're inexpensive at the same time. And I think that Canik is doing a pretty good job of showing the gun market that you can have a lot of features without breaking the bank. Now, being a larger firearm, obviously it shoots really well. If you have a firearm that's standard size shooting 9mm and you can't produce nice groups right out of the box, there's something seriously wrong anyway. But Canik has really put some effort into having a really nice trigger in the firearm. I'm pretty impressed with how well this thing works and how it breaks. If you think about it, all the things that Canik gives you, you've got a new retention holster that comes with it. They've improved the push pins for this thing, how easy they come in and out, so if you need to do disassembly. They redesigned the beaver tail to address that complaint. The Magwell edition, they changed the sight to make it easier for one-hand operation. You've got your optics cut. They've slimmed down the slide stop. I mean, they've done a lot. And there's some quality that goes into it as well. The barrel and the slide have got a tungsten gray Cerakote over nitride, which makes it very durable. And, it's little things like that. Like when you look at a pistol, you really kind of need to add up all the things that they've done to really see what they've given you. And, Canik, like I said, they like to give you stuff. They give you extra, they give you tools, your back straps, your punch. You've got your little, baby Mete here full of small parts. You've got your magazine loader. And they give you a holster. And of course, they give you an extra magazine. A lot of people, they don't care about that kind of stuff. They're 100% focused on certain specifics of their firearm. But if you're a consumer that is at all concerned about getting a good bang for your buck, no pun intended, then the Canik firearms give you a lot for your money. So far, they've proven to be very reliable. They've got great triggers, and the accuracy, speaks for itself at the range. And those are your top three considerations, in my opinion, for a carry firearm anyway: accuracy, reliability, and comfort. Like I say, this is a little bigger than what I will carry typically, but that doesn't mean that others can't do it. So overall, the Mete did address a lot of concerns from shooters. It performs really well, and there's no reason, if you like a larger firearm, this can't be a great carry option for you. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. We sure appreciate you being with us, of course, as always. We'll be back very soon with another video for you. So until then, as always, please everybody be safe and have a great day. Thank you.